regular meeting of the Nashoba Regional School Committee. At this time, anyone who so wishes may join us in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So if there is no objection from the committee, I am changing the order of the agenda. So the chair update will be first, the superintendent's report. There's no student representative report. And then we will have citizens' comments. Okay. So just a reminder to the committee that on March 25th, Dorothy Presser from MASC will be doing a workshop for us on the superintendent's evaluation, and that starts at 5 o'clock. Investigation update. Attorney Tim Norris from Norris, Murray, and Peloquin will attend the school committee meeting on March 25th to present the executive summary of the report of the investigation into the district's handling of complaints about the activities of teacher Dorothy Varaka. I do want to take a moment to talk about the school committee's role with regard to the COVID-19 situation. Superintendent Clenchey has kept the school committee up to date with information regarding this ever-changing situation. It is not within the purview of the school committee to be directly involved with communication to members of the school community and general public, or with directing the efforts to maintain a clean, safe, working, and learning environment. Superintendent Clenchey has encouraged and welcomed school committee input and feedback as we hear from our constituents and build our own understanding of this disease. In dealing with this situation, the superintendent is guided by several state, local, and federal agencies, as well as school committee policies, EBC, emergency plans, EBCD, emergency closings, JLCC, infectious disease control. Other districts refer to it as communicable diseases policy, and IHBF, homebound instruction. Now, this policy was added to our policy manual as part of our policy review. It is not on the district website. MASC is putting everything online, but I will post these policies with the materials for this meeting so folks can see them. Any questions for me? Okay, superintendent's report.
So we're going to do a different approach to our superintendent's report tonight, and we're going to focus on just coronavirus, just because of everything that's gone on in the last 48 hours. So I want to describe a bit of a timeline to give some context to the situation. Then I want to talk about what we're doing. I've got some information that I want to give to you, and I want to talk about things like potential school closures. One of the questions that has come up several times is the voting date at Stowe on Tuesday, and so I want to talk about a couple of those quick things. And then we want to bring up our middle school principals because we want to talk to you about the upcoming DC trips. We want to talk about the field trips that are scheduled and large gatherings. We've got Hello Dolly scheduled for next week. We've got our symphonic band orchestra that involves over 100 people that come into the school to meet. So we have a lot of those types of things, and I'm going to share with you some guidance from the state, and then I think we need to decide where you'd like me to go from here. And we'll talk briefly about the Italy tour and what we've done with that. So in essence, I want to start out by saying, in our offices or within the district, we are educators. We are not medical experts. We are not people to make those kinds of decisions. We don't have the expertise. We have a nurse leader who's fantastic, and our nurses are wonderful, but the rest of the school district does not have medical expertise, training, or understand process. So we have to rely heavily on our local boards of health, guidance from the state, guidance from the federal level. And that's what we did. And so I want to talk about the timeline just to give you a flavor of how things have played out since Sunday night, because that's really what's happened. So about 6 o'clock or somewhere there, about Sunday evening, I received a text from Principal Mulcairn suggesting that a staff member was being tested on Sunday for the coronavirus. And we immediately brought our nurse leader into the conversation. She immediately reached out to our local Nashoba Associated Boards of Health for some guidance, contacted the epidemiologist with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And so we got everybody kind of lined up and said, where do we go from here? Because this is the first time we've ever dealt with anything like this. So they gave us good guidance. We didn't know whether the test would come back positive or negative, and we've got people across the district that are being tested. You know, we had a young lad today be tested. The test came back negative, but we really didn't know what we were dealing with. So we decided Sunday night, because it was so late, by the time you got all these people lined up, it takes a lot of time. And so we decided Sunday night that what we would do is we would do another disinfection, sanitizing process in the center school. It wasn't something we needed to do because it had just been done on the Friday before, and the individual had not been at school or within the district for several days before that. So even though we didn't have to do it, we felt compelled to do it. So with that, we decided to do a delayed start because the process of disinfecting takes time, and then there's a drying period thereafter, and so you have to wait for the disinfecting process and then a couple of hours for things to dry, and then we felt comfortable in opening the school. We had all of this conversation with involving our medical experts that helped to guide us. Then Monday morning, we did that. The students came in, the staff came in. We had the staff come in at 10 o'clock, and then we had a quick dissemination of information type meeting with the staff to let them know what was going on. Lisa Golbicki, our nurse leader, was there, and I was there. The day went on fine. In the afternoon, we started a meeting here with our members from the Nashoba Associated Boards of Health. And we actually had the epidemiologist on the line with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. Lisa Golbicki was in the room, Ross Mulcairn, Dr. McGuire was in the room, and we received word that the individual tested positively. So that took us to a completely different phase, so to speak, in terms of our process. We were so fortunate because we had those individuals right there in the room, and we looked to them for next steps. And so, of course, the next piece of that was to decide what students needed to be quarantined. We immediately put the teacher online, and it was fortunate for us because CDC came out with fresh new guidelines at about 4:45 or 5 o'clock, and so we were able to use those guidelines in looking at what students or adults needed to be quarantined. So with the teacher on the other line, we went through, we brought up the schedule, we took a look at any students, because the guidelines that came out Friday afternoon were very specific about 6 feet or less and 15 minutes. Previous to that, we didn't have that type of guidance. So we took a look, we identified all that we thought were there. There were a total of 15. Another one we decided on the next morning. We notified that parent as well. Immediately, as soon as the students were identified, this was probably around 6:30 or so Monday night, the nurse leader and the principal divided the names of the families and started to make phone calls and to let them know that the Board of Health would be reaching out to them. As soon as those phone calls were completed, the Board of Health then reached out to each of the family to offer support, give guidance, and basically explain the process from here and what the students needed to do for re-entry. So it was done very systematically, and we were just so fortunate to have those people in the room at that point in time. So we decided that we would do another disinfection, sanitizing of center school that night. So we reached out under the direction of Rob Frieswick. He pulled a team together that night. They went in and did another disinfection of the school. I asked the Department of, or the members of the board, should I close the school? And the answer was no. You don't need to. You've done absolutely everything that you need to do. We've got the person, the patient as such, removed. Now we've got the students quarantined. The school's been disinfected again. You're fine to reopen. So we did that. So that was kind of the time frame of how, in essence, I think that we worked very quickly, and I think we were able to work quickly because we were in that meeting at that moment and were able to get good guidance right on the spot. I sent out a communication, it was the fourth communication I sent out on Monday, and then sent another one out, a fifth one out on Tuesday. We have another one that will be going out before the end of this week. The boards of health have just been fabulous to work with, so I want to mention that as well. I apologize, it's just so dry in here. So I want to go back and say, first off, we are not the medical experts. We don't make these decisions. We look to our experts in the medical field that guide this district. So if they tell us that we need to close, then we would close right away. Now, I do want to talk about closure for half a minute. Closure for this type of thing is starkly different than a snow day. A snow day, in essence, if you can imagine, and this is far too simplistic, but it's the best analogy I can think of. It's like the Commissioner of Education says, well, I don't live in all of these communities across the Commonwealth, so I'm going to leave it to the superintendents to decide whether it's safe enough for travel. And so they can make the decision based on the best knowledge that they have of what's going on in their communities. So when it's snow days, it's left to us. This is very, very different. So the superintendent can't just go and say, I think we're going to close for 2 or 3 days or 14 days or whatever it is. It doesn't work like that. And so you really look again to your boards of health to tell you, yes, you should pull the plug. This is for how many days you should close. And then we reach out to the DESE, give them the rationale, explain why we're doing it, and go from there. With regards to the DESE, we had a phone call on Friday with Commissioner Riley, and we brought in all of our principals to that meeting and some of our central office personnel. We brought in Rob Frieswick, for example. We had Lisa Gilbert, our news leader, in the room, and we took in that conference call. It was probably about an hour in length. Of course, one of the questions that comes up is if we close the schools, in light of this particular really unique situation, do those days have to be made up, or can we consider online learning? Can we consider, for example, blizzard bags? Can we think about learning packets? Can we do some out-of-box thinking with this? And we were told very quickly, no, that's not an option. The option is that you will make up the days that you've missed between now and the end of June. So he gave some guidance, and I'll circulate it. I don't know if I've got enough for the room, but he gave some guidance to us. So I'm just going to pass that out. Did I have any copies? I think I have copies from him, and of course I have the, so if we can share this with the school committee first so that they can see it, and then I'm happy to circulate it beyond if we've got an extra couple copies. Or if we can share too. Todd, you and I can share. The first part of the advisory that we received from the commissioner, and this came in late last night, early this morning when we got it, basically explains about the 180-day requirement, which all superintendents are well aware of. I think what I felt heartened by was that there's a note underneath the 180-day requirement now that says the department will continue to revisit this guidance, and that's what we are asking for as superintendents. On the phone that day was a superintendent who was just going through this process as well before we did, and he was very vocal, and he said, Commissioner, with all due respect, this is so frustrating for us, because it is. And I mean, it's one thing to have to go through all the processes to be able to do this, and then it's another thing to know that if you have to close school for several days, or schools for several days, we have to be adding this up and then making sure that absolutely everything is met by the end of June. I appreciate the fact that he says in here that we won't have to attend school after July 1st, I believe is the date. So beyond June 30th, if you're at that point in time, then you don't have to make it up, which is gracious, but nonetheless, I would like us to have had a bit clearer direction with this and a little bit more flexibility with it. But we don't make the rules, we have to abide by them. I was also heartened by the fact that they are looking at the revised chronic absenteeism accountability calculation, which is something else, if you're in education, understand that that was just put into place last year, and the superintendents continue to have concern about that component, because that also would come into play with this for as many days as we would be closed. And so we want to be proactive with this and make sure that our district isn't hurt through the accountability by any move that we make for the safety of our children. To me, it's a no-brainer, but it's just frustrating to kind of work through. On the back, you see there's a reminder about school closures and making sure that his office knows. Out-of-state travel, we're going to talk about that here in half a minute. You see that districts are urged to cancel any out-of-state travel that they have planned. And we have several things planned. I'm appreciative of the fact that the Massachusetts DECA Association withdrew from the DECA national competition, and so I'm very pleased that has happened. I'm waiting to see what happens with robotics as well, because I mean, I know that you've got a competition coming up, Al, but then you've got one scheduled in Maine and then potentially nationals. I'm waiting to see what the association is going to do with that as well, but we'll have this discussion around this table tonight. The Department of Public Health guidance, at my urging, DPH will be providing updated written guidance this week to help school leaders assess and react to situations. Well, we're already in the thick of that, and our folks told us the other day that we've handled everything precisely exactly as we should have handled it. So I felt comforted by that. School events, and again, something else we want to talk about quickly tonight. I recommend that districts encourage older community members and those at increased risk of illness to avoid large school gatherings. But then we received other guidance that says that and there was an update even since we printed this, that says that we need to look at things a little bit differently tonight. So this is, it's almost for us an hour-by-hour thing, and Elisa Gobicki has been phenomenal about keeping us in the loop with everything. And then MEMA sent out guidance as well to consider, and that guidance is, it wasn't specific to schools, but the notion of 50 people or less. And then you also look around the Commonwealth and you see things like Harvard closing, MIT, Northeastern, Suffolk. There's all these huge school districts, not school districts, schools of learning that are closing, and here we are. And I'm concerned that we're not getting, from my perspective only, solid enough guidance. For example, all out-of-state trips will be canceled. All field trips will be canceled. All concerts will be canceled, rather than saying, well, take it on a case by case. Well, that takes away consistency from my perspective. And, I understand, and we've had this conversation a million times around the table, you don't want to take all the joy away from the children right now either. How do you find that balance? So that's just a brief on what came out of the Commissioner's office basically early this morning. You've likely already seen this, but this is the governor's bit of an update as well, and you can see that in there the exact same guidance that's given by the Commissioner is included in that as well. If you look on the second page. We also just have a couple of quick sheets, just quick handouts with regards to coronavirus. Just FYI, they're just kind of quick snapshots. And while we're doing this, I'm going to ask our middle school principals to come up to the table, please. And I think we want to kind of have a bit of discussion with our school committee tonight, and we'll tell you why we're wanting to do this with regards to Washington, D.C. So, Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off, and then Laura and Qiao will look forward to you joining in.
First, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. We wish we didn't have to be here. With Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency and the implications that declaration has on public schools, we're here tonight to talk with you specifically about our approaching middle school trips to Washington, D.C. And we know that by extension, the implications that that has for all of our district trips. As Superintendent Clenchey illustrated, and as you are all well aware, we're working through rapidly changing conditions with evolving information and data having significant implications for our established daily and long-term routines. We would recommend to the committee that in light of Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency and the Commissioner of Education's advisory to schools stating districts are urged to cancel any out-of-state travel that they have planned, that we cancel the trips to Washington, D.C. We have agonized over this decision. We recognize how much our students have been looking forward to this trip. We also recognize how much effort has been put into planning the trip. We acknowledge that our students may have difficulty accepting this decision on an emotional level. We do as well. We do hope that over time that we can all come to the understanding on a cognitive level that this decision was made in the best interest of the health and safety of all of our students and staff.
One of the issues that is arising for not just Nashoba, but across the state and across the country right now is the money that is linked to these trips. And we're having the same issue right now with EF, for example, and I'll cite them specifically because that's the trip for Italy that has been slated for our high school students. And you talk about agonizing, I mean, that too was an agonizing set of discussions that we had. What's frustrating for us is these are organizations like that are outside of the school district that operate in accordance with their set of parameters, their set of rules, etc. And the superintendents have been maintaining contact clearly over the last couple of days with regards to everything. And this particular situation, particularly with regards to EF, Explorica, there are several others. I think you're going to talk about that too. And, you know, where they're just saying, we're not going to give you your money back. And, you know, the DC trips, you're looking at around that $1,000 mark. With Italy, you're looking at $3,600. These are not small sums of money. And, you know, so for the Italy piece, I know, well, actually, why don't I just turn it over to you to talk about the Italy piece before we go back, but it's kind of all lumped in together with the same thing.
Yeah, in terms of the Italy trip, obviously we saw, you know, these kinds of concerns coming, particularly when the issues were going on in Italy, and we were having conversations with EF Education as well as our own groups here. I had multiple conversations with EF. I've worked with them extensively in the past. And, you know, asked them to come out to our meetings and address our families as they were giving us alternatives to the trip being canceled, alternatives that really, quite honestly, did not meet our satisfaction. An alternative place to travel, that can't happen. Governor Baker just has a state of emergency, no travel outside, so an alternative place to travel like Costa Rica wasn't going to work. Giving half money back, also, it's not going to work. We have people, families invested in this. So I was very adamant, met with and conference called with several people over there and several higher ups over there, and begged them to send somebody out this week. And they said that they weren't going to do that. So as of today, we have a letter that's signed by 50 superintendents across the state of Massachusetts. That letter has gone to the president of EF, imploring them to reimburse 100% of the trip to all families. We've reached out to Representative Kim Ferguson's office as well as the governor's office, and they are running this up the pipeline with not just EF, but other companies such as World Strides and Explorica, because as you can imagine, multiple districts across New England and the nation are sending kids on trips for the April break. So the governor's office has reached back out to us, asking us for specifics. Where were you traveling? How many people were going? What was the cost of the trip? What were the alternatives that they were proposing to give you, such as travel vouchers, half reimbursement, etc. So this is an ongoing process, but I can tell you it is being moved up the pipeline very quickly and forcefully as it relates to this trip. So, and we are on it.
Mm-hmm. So we're planning on being very active within the superintendent's group that is going after the organization.
Do you have more about the trips, or can I see if?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that I'd like each one of them to.
Questions if you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone have questions for Laura, and Kyle, and Dr. Bates?
Ask a question.
Yes, Leah.
So I feel very emotional about this too. I'm so sorry that this is happening to them and to you guys. Do you think that there might be a scenario where you could do, assuming things are better next spring, where you could bring both the 8th and the 9th grade?
Boy, I don't know. That would have, we really have to think about that, because then you're pulling your kids out of your high school for that week. I don't know. I mean, that's not a bad idea, though,
I only
Leah.
ask because Hudson's trip lives in the 9th grade. So.
I understand that, but it doesn't with ours, and so that's going to mean that many days of instruction lost. And so I think we would have to look further into that. But we're open to any ideas for sure.
We've found, to Dr. McGuire's point, we've also been in communication with our tour groups, and they're looking at significant economic repercussions, and so they've been pretty strident in their conversations with us. So I think eventually all of these things will be back on the table again, but right now, as Dr. McGuire said, they're dealing with school districts all around the country.
Okay, so that's too far off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you guys saying, I know that you're saying that you're struggling with the Italy trip getting reimbursed, the Washington DC trip is in the same boat?
It's not quite the same, but that's why I was hoping that each one of them could speak to us. This is why we're on the table
Part of
tonight.
this agenda right now, we're going to get to a point where if we waited until your next meeting, for example, we wouldn't be able to recoup anything. We're still enough of a window away where contractually they're obligated to, give some money back.
It's different, I think, for the 3 different schools, because our trips are going at different times, and out of the 3 of us, we are using 2 different tour providers. We found, after we've been poring over their various trip insurance policies and their refunds, that those 2 companies have quite different refund policies. So, and even then, of Luther Burbank and Hale, which is using the same travel agency, because we're going at different times, there's a significant difference in how much you can get back within certain windows.
And so if we were to cancel, say, tomorrow, what would your 2 schools?
Well, all 3 schools would be able to recoup
A portion.
Yeah,
A substantial
percentages,
portion.
and those percentages we're not clear on that yet, because hotels are saying they may assess penalties, and this is where the government steps in to say, yeah, you're not going to do that. So right now, we just don't know what that would look like, but and that's why we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. If we wait until the next meeting, it's a completely different scenario.
And it's different than even when you factor in those families that did or did not purchase trip insurance, and then what level of trip insurance did they purchase. So, I think one of the reasons it was very, we started the conversation Tuesday morning, right? Because we realized we had just been on a conference call on Friday, the superintendent Clenchey had referenced earlier. And we realized that both Joel and I, our schools had a deadline coming up on Friday where...
And we've had members of our community reaching out too with, is this in jeopardy?
So it really became one of those, we needed to make a decision, and the possibility of not receiving any, forfeiting 100% of invoiced monies was on the horizon as of Friday, this coming Friday.
I think there's one more factor too that's an unknown, which is if we were to hypothetically proceed with the trips, we may very well have individual families who elect not to send their children.
Very likely.
And that would have a significant impact on the cost of the trip for those students who are remaining, and that's an unknown. And we would certainly want to respect individual families' decisions not to send their children if they didn't feel comfortable. And then when we received the guidance from the governor and the commissioner yesterday, it precipitated us to present to you this evening.
Now, the guidance that just came through today at 4:54 says the following. On March 10th, and this comes from the DESE, on March 10th, 2020, Governor Baker announced that executive branch employees should discontinue all out-of-state work-related travel, cancel conferences, or hold them virtually, and not attend external work-related conferences, seminars, or events. While schools are not part of the executive branch, the governor also urged employers and other large organizations, and that's where we fall, to limit or eliminate non-essential travel. And that's kind of where you start to get back to other field trips that are on the horizon. We're worried about the Hello Dolly presentation that's coming up. We've got a group scheduled to go to Boston this weekend from the high school to the Blue Man Group. We've got music competitions on the horizon. We have sports banquets that are coming up starting this weekend. We have just such a host of activities that are on the horizon. I have started to receive some emails asking if they can please be refunded for their tickets for Hello Dolly because they're choosing not to attend, which again we respect, so we're going to have to meet on that tomorrow morning. So let me just finish this. To limit or eliminate non-essential travel and limit or eliminate large events where possible. Please review what field trips and events your district has planned. Each situation is unique, but we suggest you evaluate the risks in light of the growing number of coronavirus cases. So that just like right off the press tonight before I walked in here. And so,
Other questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Lee.
I just wonder, you guys are reaching out to our politicians. Did they give you any indication what the timeline is for getting some information back to families?
no.
They did not.
And I think, again, that's one of the things that we're finding so frustrating right now is, and I'm not being negative, please don't hear that, and I realize that we're all doing the best that we can, but I do think that school districts could have, right now, better guidance from our state and federal partners. And I think you said it quite articulately today when you said, it just feels like people are flailing out there trying to figure out what to do next. So here we sit tonight saying, here's where we're sitting. We're not supposed to have any of these. Do we shut it all down now? Any and all events? Is that the stance we take? At the very least, I think we need to I would suggest taking a vote to cancel. And normally we would not take a vote to cancel. Maybe Joel, do you want to just speak to that piece about one of the reasons why we need a vote from this committee? It's really for your organizations, the other two don't need it.
Well, actually, I think it applies to all of us, but just to have, the school district as an institution, by virtue of the school committee's direction, it doesn't end up, it's not an arbitrary decision to not go. We're being told we can't go.
And I know it's too soon to plan, but I assume that the vast majority of 8th graders were going to attend these trips. And just in thinking broadly in the event of cancellation, any consideration for alternative local
Yes.
activities? Do you have any ideas that
We
you
don't have
can
any
share?
firm plans yet, but we've started to discuss it.
Okay.
We've identified the need to figure something out. For
Okay.
sure,
The
yes.
desire and the need.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last questions? Mike?
I think one of the bigger purposes for the potential for canceling school is to sort of reduce those social interactions, especially in large groups. The number that keeps popping up is about 150. Is the district working with the town in any way to prevent one social gathering from just being replaced by others? So like, in other words, if kids are not interacting with each other at school, but then they're continuing to just interact and gather in another setting, it's sort of...
So, Mike, that's such a great question, because let me suggest another scenario, and any one of us in here can probably think of 100 different scenarios, quite frankly. So let's say, for example, Center School, and not to pick on Center School, but that just happens to be the school that we're dealing with right now. Let's say, for example, we didn't go through any of this, and I just made the decision to shut the school down for 14 days to, in essence, break the cycle, because that's some of the emails that they're coming in. Can you just break the cycle? We can only control what we can within the school setting. Those children are only with us for a portion of the day. When they leave here, they go home to their families. We have no idea where their parents' workplace has taken them, or what their parents have been exposed to in the work day as such, or where they've traveled to, or maybe they had to shoot over to Providence, Rhode Island, or maybe they had to, we have no idea. And so it's such a huge juggernaut to try to wrap your head around, because the bottom line is we could shut it down for 2 weeks, for 14 days. We could shut the entire district down for 14 days, come back, and one person could start to trigger the whole thing all over again, and we'd all be back out again for 14 days again, and here we start again, and then I don't think this is what's going to happen, but I mean, certainly, I don't know if you remember the storm of 2008, when we had to make all those days back up, and I don't know what it was like in Nashoba at that time, but our kids at that point in time, in the district I was in, no holidays, weekend instruction, all that kind of thing, and that's really where this, if the commissioner doesn't change his thinking on this, that's his initial thinking as of Friday. I'm hoping that tomorrow, when we have our conference call tomorrow, that he will have become a bit more flexible in that thinking. But the other thing that sometimes, again, we don't always know what's behind this. I think that there's federal guidelines that are behind that 180 number, if memory serves me right. That's why our commissioners have to be, and our chiefs have to be so strident with that 180 number. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know that it would even make sense, because we can only control what we can barely control inside of our buildings.
So, can I have a motion to cancel the DC trips for the middle schools in both Lancaster and Stowe?
Do you want?
I
specific?
What does it say?
It's more than that.
Okay, go ahead. I didn't realize
Sorry,
that
do you
was
have a
there. I'm
question?
sorry, go ahead,
Make
Steve.
the motion and second it, then I have something to say.
Okay, no, we
Okay.
get the question and discussion. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is hard to read, but it is necessary. I move that we cancel all overnight and out-of-state travel and take any other action necessary in order to achieve such cancellation for the remainder of the current school year, or until advised otherwise by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion? Steve?
Two things.
Yes.
Number one, just leaving it off at this one thing, I'm glad the motion said what it did.
Yes.
Basically, looking at everything. Number two, I think this is a point where we have to break protocol, and I know.
Go on,
I
you
know,
go on.
you'd be shocked that we have to break protocol and maybe hear from some of the parents who are here, which we have not done at this point. This is an item that's on the agenda, and I think it might be time to hear from them if they want to speak on this issue. Any other issue can be later when you choose, have parent or have citizen comments. But I think on this issue, we should hear from some of our...
Can I wrap up a couple of quick thoughts before we do that?
Certainly.
If the school committee chooses to go down that road.
Sure.
Since Monday morning, up to about 12:30 today, I've responded to 500 emails. And I'm very appreciative of the types of emails that have come through. They have been thoughtful, gracious, understanding. It was interesting, some of the health experts that live in our communities have said, we're so frustrated with the lack of guidance that we feel that we're receiving. I can only imagine what it's like in your world right now. So I'm appreciative, and I always said back, thank you for so getting this, because it is very, very difficult. Like I said, when you can see that you've got like literally a day after day new set of guidelines that come into play. So I just want to send a special thank you out to all of those people who have emailed into, that's to me. They've also been emailing into our principals as well, and I'm just so appreciative of that. I want to thank the center staff, because this has been very hard on our center staff, as well as our center parents and our center children. One of the things, if you take a look, and I was only quasi-teasing this morning, as we had a large group meeting in here this morning about, you don't want to think of yourself as a doomsday prepper, but I'm quickly learning that I kind of am right now, you know, and even personally, and we've had this discussion even as the principals around the table, and quite frankly, one of the reasons we've got the extra things to do the disinfecting is because we actually stockpiled some of that because we could see this coming. And that's why we've got extra tablets in the district to use for extra sanitizing and disinfecting. So I'm grateful to our staff for looking ahead and stockpiling some of this stuff well before now, when, you know, I think, you know, we heard the story the other night about the hand sanitizer that normally is $3, that it was like $100 type thing, you know, and we're not in that position right now, so I'm incredibly grateful. Nonetheless, when you look at what are things to do for prepping for all of this, one of the things that they say is try to keep routine and try to make sure that you're also planning for yourself emotionally. I would transfer that thinking right now to our children, because this is a lot of no's. If you were a child and these were all of your parents, you're hearing no to things that you have looked forward to all year. The Washington, D.C. trip, that's something that kids look forward to as soon as we get to grade 8. My heart breaks for those 22 kids right now that are seniors that have been looking so forward to going to Italy. All these things, like, how do you tell the students that have worked prepped for Hello Dolly that maybe we can't do this? Or the robotics team that has been building its robot all year to say, I don't think you can go to all of these. Like, I think we just really want to be careful, because I worry that this is just going to, I worry about the emotional impact that this is going to send to our children right now, not just our parents. So I want to thank everybody that's helping to support this. I think Ross Mulcairn, I think he did an outstanding job in a really high stress situation, and his second, Christy Neal, and our custodial and facilities team, who went above and beyond Sunday night, Monday morning, and then again Monday night, and just do this all the time. And by the way, they're not just doing this, and I'm sure people know this, at the Stowe schools. They're doing this throughout our entire district. And so I think that they've done an outstanding job. And by the way, this question has only come up once, but I just put it out there. The disinfectants and the tablets that we're using are all registered with the EPA as effective agents for fighting the spread of coronavirus. Okay. So that's it. So thank you.
So if there are no objections, I would entertain Steve's proposal to suspend.
Basically, under the normal protocols of public comment. Yeah.
Yes. But before I do that, I did have a couple of questions. I know that there are students at the center school who are under quarantine for 14 days. And what is the plan for implementing our policy on homebound instruction for those students?
So we've had discussion on that, and we're going to have further discussion tomorrow after we get guidance from the commissioner. We're hoping that he might be perhaps a bit more flexible tomorrow in this particular area. But Joel, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, yeah. So hoping that it doesn't, but knowing that we need to address this, we've taken teaching and learning department meetings that we have with the Department of Teaching and Learning, Dr. McGuire, and the principals to talk through the issues around what does distance learning look like, and obviously it looks very different across the scope of the school district. Mm-hmm. And we have, with the conference call tomorrow, questions specifically for Associate Commissioner Betancourt around what we could do that satisfies the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's expectations around what that would look like. We've talked as a team, as a Department of Teaching and Learning, and and with teachers around what some of those options might look like. I can't speak to your question specifically with what Principal Mulcairn is doing, but
Can you
I
give
know
us
that
just
that's
some,
part of his-
whether or not, what are some things that are being considered? Do you have any specifics about options?
Sure. So, again, the scope of the school district, it would look different, for a high school student than it might for a middle school student, than it might for an elementary school student. So so let me start, I guess, from the earliest levels. At an elementary level, you're talking about literacy and practice in literacy and reading, and we discussed just all of the kids have their book bins that you've supported, just as simple as you're going to bring your book bin home with you, and you've got your writer's response journal, and you're going to be working on, responding to text and those kinds of things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be technology-based. Some of the issues that we're working through is, what that looks like in terms of the responsibility to achievement towards standards and seat time and those kinds of things, which are we can have the discussion, but we probably can't have the answer, because that's a question for the DESE around, what satisfies the requirements and what those requirements may end up looking like. At a middle level, currently with your support of the Chromebook initiative, our teachers use Google Classroom. I want to be clear about something. We were clear about this in the meeting too. Parents, students shouldn't expect just a replicated home classroom to what they would experience in our classrooms today. But we want to continue so that there isn't regression. We want to offer the opportunity for learning, and so we're talking through those areas right now. At the high school level, I didn't get to that. Just it would look different because you're not in sort of a middle school model, and it's content specific, and so we have questions around what that would look like for equity in terms of special needs, our ELLs, our early childhood learners, but rest assured it's at the forefront of our discussions right now.
Okay, so what would be helpful as those plans are developed, if you could just keep the school committee up to date on the steps that are being taken. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, yesterday I received an email from Amanda Bennett, who runs the Stowe Food Pantry, inquiring with regard to any procedures in place if the schools are closed due to the COVID-19. What will happen to the children who receive free or subsidized breakfast or lunch? How many will this potentially affect in our district? We have programs in place during the summer to pick up the food difference, but what will happen if school is closed for an extended period? Have you protocols in place? And then please let us know what we can do to help. So that's another thing that has to be on our radar, that needs to be a priority. And I don't know of of the students that are currently quarantined, if any of them their families avail themselves of these services. But it would be good to know and to see what we can do to support that. And I really appreciate Amanda reaching out and making this inquiry. And so the information will help us.
This is actually on our radar. We had some of this discussion earlier today, aside from that email. But just as an aside on that too, even in our schools right now, all of our salad bars, for example, are being shut down. We're going to prepackaged salads. We're going to prepackaged condiments. We're taking steps like that as well with food services. Our bus and van transportation, we immediately reached out to them. And incidentally, I want to be cautious. This didn't all just start on Monday, and I want to be really careful about that, because we were actually doing this because we saw this coming. We didn't expect Monday to happen. but we were proactive along the way, which is why we had the tablets, why our people were trained in how to fog properly and what that drying time looked like. That's why, because we were prepared as we could have been as a school district. And even with the work that Tom's doing. So we had some product that we were able to speak with our bus lines, our transportation lines on, and talk to them at some length about our expectations for our buses and vans. And Mike, it kind of gets back to, again, you don't know where your students are going to be in close proximity to anything, you know. So I know that we were thinking about buses, but I don't think all school superintendents at one point in time were thinking about buses.
Sure.
You know, but think about how many students and it gets back to, well, how many, you said the 150, MEMA came out today with a number of 50. We don't have lunches, for example, in our cafeterias with 50 children. It can't be done. So 50 is not a number that's realistic for a school district, but what is a number? We don't have good guidance on that right now, so anyway.
At this point, I would like to invite anyone who's here who wanted to say something about the coronavirus and the district response to come forward to participate.
And you're on the field trip. Promotion.
Well, anything
Anything
yes,
related to
everything
coronavirus.
related to coronavirus. Yes, hi. Could
Hi.
you stand up, please, and tell us who you are and what town, and you've got 3 minutes.
Sure. I'm Amy Qiao. I'm in Stowe, and I'm a first grade teacher at Center School. Sorry, everybody. So a couple of questions. You know, we certainly have been well informed of things going on at school. I guess some questions we're still waiting on are conferences, which are coming up shortly.
We're hoping we have good guidance on that tomorrow too, Amy.
Yeah. And, you know, with so many students out in various classes right now, thinking about planning for curriculum, it's hard. I had 7 students out of my class today, and that's pretty across the board. So those are things that we're concerned about.
And we're well aware of that, and we're having those discussions right now.
Those are the things that, you know, are on the list. There's a lot of concern right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And
Yeah.
again, as these concerns are addressed, if you can keep the school committee updated, because our next meeting is 2 weeks away, but I think we'd want to know in a timely fashion how things are being.
Right, and the other thing too, we had asked, this is completely separate, but we'd asked the Nashoba Associated Boards of Health if they could have a representative here tonight, and as you can imagine, they're out straight, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
so we're hoping to have somebody here at the next school committee meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wanted to? Yes, hi.
To do this because I don't want to stand up here.
That's okay.
I'm Genjiro, and I live in Stowe, and one of my daughters is one of the 22 that is unable to go to Italy this year. And I just appreciate that you're acknowledging the fact of the emotional, I mean, a teenage daughter already is dramatic. This is, it's rough. I was actually happy to come here today. So it's been pretty impactful, and the concern, I mean, it's just, it's the unknown, I think, that's so disturbing for everyone. So the problem is, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So I feel like some of this planning, like I went to the EF meeting last night, and people are upset about getting refunded and getting their money back. I feel like at this point, let's get this under control and take it from there. And I understand that the kids are devastated, and it is a lot of money, and our daughter saved half of it for her trip to go. The thing is, it's out of everyone's control, and we're doing the best we can, and I just appreciate that we're trying to move on. So, and I feel for you, because 8th graders are just as bad as high schoolers, so that's tough.
Do you want to be there with me when it's time?
No, thank you. No. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else? Any more questions, discussion around the table? Elaine?
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment that I think we all understand this is unprecedented, and that we all, like all of us, need to have incredible amounts of flexibility right now, but when there's, in the absence of guidance, and I think we're seeing a lack of that, especially at the highest levels in the country, like we still have to do the right thing. And so if protocols need to go out the window, if we need to do things that are unprecedented, then we have to do things that are unprecedented. And that comes with uncertainty, and it comes with emotional trauma, and it comes with a lot of stuff. But like, I think it's time to really start thinking outside the box, because I think we're there.
You know, you find it interesting when you see Harvard basically saying, telling the students probably not to be coming back till like next semester type thing. And we've been told that to expect that this is going to go on through the summer. So this is not something that's like the next week or 2 weeks. And so that's what the motion says, what it does. In case there is a change, we've left the wiggle room there that we can come back in and say, okay, let's say that the information that we're getting is wrong, and maybe it isn't going to go through the summer, maybe it's only going to go through a couple of weeks, then we would want to do a regroup, and we've had that discussion around the table as well. So I appreciate it. I think I totally agree with you. And actually, I had a bit of this discussion the other day about, it's just really about what the right thing is to do for the children in front of us. And right now, it's safety. I know this is hard, I know this is emotional, but there is a safety component that has to lead us in the right direction.
Okay. Leah? Oh, I'm sorry, did somebody want to say something? Oh, yes, hi.
Hi, I'm Amy Cohen from Bolton. I just had a question about the motion. Would you mind reading it?
Oh, no, I was just going to say to read it again, but I wanted to make sure everyone was heard first.
Yeah, my question is just regarding whether it was for travel and field trips or for...
If you can just wait a second until I see, then we're definitely going to read it again. Did somebody else want to say something? Did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, okay, I thought it was... Oh, Leah.
Just two really quick things. I think that the Institutes of Higher Learning, the one difference that I'm reading about is that the reason why they're closing is because on spring break, they anticipate kids going not only out of state, but out of country, especially at Harvard and some of these other institutions. So after spring break, they don't want all of that to come back home.
Right.
So it's a little different from the small public school system, right? So
Yes.
that's important to note. And then the other thing that I've been getting a lot of feedback on, and this doesn't really have much to do with the motion, but I just want to put it out there, that there are a lot of people in our schools who are immunocompromised.
We're well aware of that.
And so working that into your conversation with the commissioner, or kind of considering that, and whatever you bring back out to the community, recognizing that there are some students who are actually in graver danger, and perhaps that's why Mrs. Qiao's class has this, this opting out happening, which is totally understandable. So I would just raise that.
Well, I think actually, Amy, in that Monday morning meeting, I believe that was something that you even brought up, is, the fact that, I mean, you weren't specific to this, but that's the very kind of thing that you were talking about. And so that is very much on our radar.
Those of us with compromised situations and family members with, for sure.
Yeah.
It is concerning, and I just want clarification. As far as I know, the students are only quarantined for 7 days.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, if that's something that has changed, but that's my understanding.
Okay.
And I don't know, I guess it just comes back to, you're talking about, at what point do we think out of the box? And it just sort of feels
like this is a time.
scary.
This is an
to me that
opportunity.
We're trying to all be so strong for these students, and it's hard.
Couldn't agree more with you.
So, if there's no objection, I will have Elaine read the motion again, please.
I move that we cancel all overnight and out-of-state travel and take any other action necessary in order to achieve such cancellation for the remainder of the current school year or until advised otherwise by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
And we had a second from Leah. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion
you.
carries.
So that's travel, but I would like to have some brief discussion with regards to your thoughts, or some good guidance from you with regards to the other activities that are ongoing. At the end of our meeting today, for example, our interim principal, Steve Cullining, came up and said, well, here's our list, and it was a page long of all of the events that high school are involved in over the course of the next, even probably 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, even if you think about it, Challenge Day, or, like those kinds of things.
Because that was already postponed once, wasn't it?
It was. But that's when you bring all of those students into that
Yes, that's
gymnasium,
right.
So, I mean, I would just appreciate some feedback, and I don't know that I'm asking you to make a decision on it, like the travel. The travel we felt we really needed, but I would like to hear some input from you, and I would be so bold as to say if parents want to offer some feedback that we're sitting here tonight, happy to hear that too, with regards to just general, smaller sized venues rather than, the Hello Dolly or.
Steve, did you want to speak to any of this?
It's just concerning because it's so fluid. It just changes every few minutes, and I get a lot of people calling me asking questions and I don't have answers for them. That's probably the hardest thing because it does change so fast.
Sure. I guess my question to the committee is, and I appreciate you folks coming forward, and I do agree, if you have the governance structure of the school system saying we're canceling those trips, it puts you in a better position to recoup some money for the families. So I'm wondering about that approach with regard to other things that are internal that still bring together lots of folks. I'd like to just hear what you folks are all thinking about. Now, is this particular to the high school, or do we want to just...
No, it's right across. I mean, Boston Symphony, for example, all the many grade 5 classes, for example, taking the Boston Symphony field trip. But then you also have had organizations, or like the JFK Library closed, I believe, today. I mean, you've had a lot of that kind of thing too. So no, it's broader than just the high school.
Okay. Leah.
So my initial instinct, and I haven't given this a ton of thought, but is that when you're talking about kids traveling to locations where there's a very diverse population, perhaps people who have been out of the country, etc., that feels more immediate than the smaller, more internal things like Hello Dolly or the music.
Competitions?
Yeah, competitions, but also just like the chorus concert at Center was postponed.
Yeah.
So I think that we should look at them differently.
Okay. Steve?
I think that we have to almost look at every event individually. An event like a sporting event, that you have the game played with no audience, to me seems to be kind of silly, because one of the players could spread it throughout the NBA or something like that. I think that in reality, and it's almost a day-to-day decision that you have to make, to put a blanket policy in place that we're going to cancel everything. Well, you're going to cancel a reading club meeting that has 7 kids, but there's always one kid who could be bringing it home from a father or a mother who went on a business trip, and we just don't know what we don't know.
Exactly, yes.
That's part of the problem with this thing. And our last experience with this was 101 years ago.
I wasn't there. What was your experience at that time?
My experience at that time, well, we found that actually, I heard a report today that schools that shut down totally during the pandemic of 1918-19 actually came out better than other schools. The problem is, in 1918-19, we didn't have 2 earning parents, where when you closed down the school, you could send a kid home. Our homes were far more separated than they are now. The horses that drew our carriages were, but to really, it's like I'm having to make a decision on meetings that groups that I belong to are having at least scheduled for the next month to 2 months.
Okay.
And the problem is, part of our population is older and is deprived or deficient, whatever you want to call it. And it always seems to me that you have to err on the side of care as opposed to you know, kids are kind of resilient. They'll bounce back to pretty much almost anything. I know it's a short-term emotional issue, many trips being canceled, sporting events being canceled, plays and musicals being canceled. But you know what? If we save one life, or one parent's life, or something, one grandparent's life, is it worth it? And I agree, I think it is.
Thank you. Mike?
I think the reality is we're not going to eliminate risk. We're just minimizing it. Those are the decisions that we have to make. I tend to agree with Steve that we can't use a blanket policy. I think we probably have to do it case by case. I would say that if our guiding principle has always been and will always be, let's do what we feel is best for students, particularly in regards to safety. If that's our driving principle, then I think parents will understand. Kids might not understand, but their parents will and teachers will, and I think that comes with a level of understanding that makes it a little bit easier to process.
Okay, thank you. Elaine?
No, I was just going to say, I think MEMA's guidance is probably a good general guidance to go by, even though it doesn't sort of need to be specific. There's some things that can be modified, like TV shows are starting to do it without studio and audience. Like March Madness is going to happen without the audience. And that's not the same thing, but is it better than nothing? Like Mike said, you can't completely eliminate risk, but you are significantly minimizing it by doing some creative things like that. Personally, I think that when it comes to pandemics, the downside of doing too little too late is huge. It's literally measured in lives. Exactly. And the downside of doing too much too early is sort of an emotional trauma, but to me, that's easier to deal, even though it's really hard, it's easier to deal with than the loss of life, and you still might get the loss of life anyway. So I would err on the side of caution and say let's be more restrictive.
Did any parents want to speak specifically to this, the idea that we've made a decision about overnight and out of state and out of country travel, but the things that are currently scheduled, play, concerts, things of that nature, any thoughts?
I'm June Mitchell from Bolton.
Okay.
I was going to say that I agree to trying to err on the side of caution, and I've been thinking about this through the meeting tonight, is that while the parents can choose to not send their kids, the staff members and the teachers, I assume, have to be there. So, thinking about them not having the choice to say, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out, I think it makes sense, and what you said made sense, so.
Thank you, Jim. Joseph, did you want to speak to that?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I'm battling a very severe loss of voice tonight, so I'm going to...
You? What are we going to do?
A lawyer? Oh, my goodness.
That's why.
Okay.
But I concur with Steve, and I'll leave it at that. I don't know what voice to say, so I'm sorry about that.
All right, no, I'm sorry too.
So I don't know.
haven't had my chance
No,
yet.
I was going to say, why don't you take your time,
No,
and then
I
I'll tell
guess
you
what
what my final thoughts
I
are.
think about is this whole idea of having the discussions at the sites and getting input, like Amy, your understanding of your school and the culture of that school. And then I think to June's point, parents can opt out, but there are situations where teachers can't. But, so I'm not in favor of a blanket, let's just cancel everything, but I'm wondering if, and if you guys want to weigh in, that would be great. What would it look like at the sites if you sat down with your staffs and had these discussions? Oh, and Steve too. Feel free, chime in.
Want to sit up here, Steve?
If you had, not. What would it look like? I mean, what do you think about having it be like a site-based, or if the three of you got together and said, this is what the middle schools are going to do, and then you need to weigh in because you're in charge of all these folks. So what do you guys think about an approach?
I think it's, I mean, I think there's,
Joel said he's monopolized the talking.
No, Kyle, and he just interrupted Kyle, who was ready to speak.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I think it's really hard because, when you do start to look at it, kids are very attuned to equity and fairness. And when you start to say that, we're not going to Washington, D.C., but we're going to take a group of students who play music and bring them to Canopy Lake Park, and expose them to who knows what at a musical competition. That's a big one. It's adjudicated. I mean, it's a major experience for them. And then and to have 250 people in your auditorium for a play. The advice that we've been given by the commissioner is to, at this point, who knows what tomorrow we'll get. But at this point, it's really just directing to your parent and in your community to not have older members of the community or those who are immunocompromised at these events. If I was a betting man, I'd probably argue that we're going to hear something different about that tomorrow. I agree about the not having a blanket policy, but it does create considerable nuances then where we're looking at every small event, and it's likely that, and we're happy to come before you, but it's likely then that we'll be here quite regularly to get approval to cancel this, that, and many other trips. I think the other thing we think about too is you got to think about the extended school programs that go into the summer.
Yeah.
That's another thing that is sort of that unknown out there. Can I just make one point about the Washington, D.C.? We do have a plan that we did not mention about how we're communicating this out to the families, and I think it might be valuable for you to know that.
Yes, thank you.
We had a couple of letters ready to go depending on which way.
They're well prepared tonight. That's right, 5 different drafts is what they created.
The short answer is we will notify our parents tonight and we'll meet with our kids tomorrow.
Okay. Steve, did you have a comment?
Would it be easier for you and Mr. Colonnade if we, rather than pass a motion to do something, had a resolution encouraging action on the side of care as opposed to other things? I mean, in other words, I want to provide a safety net for the administration by us saying we in reality encourage you to deal with these things on a proactive basis rather than a reactive basis, and that means to...
Well, Steve, and I respect that. I don't know that we need a motion on that. I think as long as
That's
we've
not a motion.
got a resolution.
I think we have, and not tonight, but at some point, you need to tell me the difference between the two.
Okay.
But not tonight. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think as long as you give me direction tonight, and I think I've gotten that, to be honest with you, and I'm good. And we'll sit down as the principals and the administrative team now and start to work through. And I think a big part of our purpose for tonight was just to say, hey, this is what we're up against right now, and there are so many unknowns. And we've said this again today, and then that's my last comment. What we come into in the morning is starkly different with what we leave with by the end of the day, and that has held true for probably over a week now. So we just simply don't know.
So the other thought that I had, that like the Canopy Lake music trip, is that in June or May?
It's in May, and that's out of state, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so, but it may be that they pulled the plug on it.
Oh, they might.
So if we had like not a game day decision, but a close to game day as possible for these things, somebody might do it for us.
And that's exactly what our approach has been thus far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is, it's small, but there is a cost associated with it too. So that's another thing we need to look at, like, should they pull the plug, or if we cancel on them and not send our students.
That's right.
It just, all that starts to mount up on families, where you're losing money here and there.
Is it toward the end of May? I'm trying to remember when it is.
around Memorial Day.
It's around Memorial. So even if we made a decision May 1st, so I guess my point is there are some things that don't have to be decided tonight, but like things about the plays in 2 weekends.
And we have parent-teacher conferences starting next week too, so I think that that's something.
And I think, I want to point out too, we don't need a vote for every single thing that we cancel, because it's just going to be too big.
I would, if it reassures you, we're pretty well calibrated. We talk all the time about how a decision I might make with Laura and Kyle, so.
Same for all of
So,
us.
right, well, I just meant as far as middle school principals, it applies to the elementary as well. So I don't think we'd be making these decisions in a vacuum.
Sure, and the other thing is the school committee policy says that we have to approve out-of-state and overnight field trips, but there is discretion on the part of the administration.
That's right.
To look at other things. The only thing I ask is that whatever decisions are made, that you keep us informed with the rationale, but if these decisions can be staggered, like if something's going to happen next week, then it's time to make the decision. But if something's happening in May, that is, just a day trip or something, then how does that sound to folks?
It'll be a lot for us to let you know, just because of just the sheer volume. Are you wanting to know every single thing?
No, you can group them all together and say, it would be good to know, like, if we don't, like, Steve's got his list, but how many are happening next week?
A few.
But not all.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know, if folks feel they don't need to be informed, that's fine with me, but, yeah, Leah?
I think that I don't feel like I need to be informed. I think that we can trust in you guys to
Of
make the
course.
best decision possible. I think that I really appreciate what you said, Kyle, about equity.
Yeah.
So as long as safety is first and equity is first behind, if those two guiding principles are there, then it is what it is.
Okay. Elaine?
I think the one thing that we can do now is start preparing the communities for the possibility of it. I mean, I hate to increase the uncertainty and then like cause people to panic about things, but it does seem like the type of situation where like you guys need to be prepared. This might get canceled. Start going through that like emotional process now.
One thing that we have discussed is that within close proximity to tomorrow's conference call, that there are some things that we need to talk to our communities about regarding absenteeism and how, that we're not going to be sending letters home about students who are absent during these periods of time. So there's quite a bit. I think this Washington, D.C. letter is going to be the first of several communications around a lot of these items. And I know if we follow our past practice, we're all going to be quite calibrated in what we send out to our communities.
All right. Oh, Amy, yes.
I had a question about the absenteeism and the quarantined students. You talked about if we quarantine and we come back, somebody could infect that first day back, and I get that, and that's certainly what they're all talking about. But we have the 16 quarantined students who have siblings at our school, at Hale, and at the high school. And that just, I don't know, so that seems confusing, but I know it's the directive.
You're absolutely right. And to be honest with you, it's one of the pieces of guidance that I don't understand.
Right.
And, they speak about the direct contact. And in this case, the direct contact would be teacher to student. But student to student would not be seen as another direct contact.
That first
and that's true. But to be honest with you, I think, and we've had this discussion even with our nurse leader, so that we've said, we don't understand this. However, that's the guidance that we're given, and as we say, the guidance changes from day to day, and we can only go with what we know that day.
Absolutely.
So what if that's the guidance? The reality in the US right now, as I understand it, is that we're not testing as many people as we probably should be, and we're only waiting to test until the answer is kind of obvious. So, waiting, if the siblings were all getting tested and it's coming back negative, I would say fine, that guidance makes sense, but if they're not getting tested anyway, then it does kind of seem like we're playing with fire. Is there a way that we can be more cautious than what they said?
There really isn't, because the school district doesn't have that, it doesn't have that ability to do that. That has to come from the Board of Health. That's not a school district call. So with the Board of Health not doing it, we definitely cannot do that. It's the same thing. I mean, another example would be if I had decided to close the school, let's say on either Monday or Tuesday. Well, let's say Tuesday would be the better example. After the Board of Health said, no, you don't have to, then I would call the commissioner and I would have to say, I'd like to close the school. And the first question would be, was that the guidance of the Board of Health? If I was to say no, then there's no support. So I think people need to understand that. It's a totally different process than snow days.
Anything else? So to sum up, we have, well, just in a nutshell, with regard to school events, we have voted to cancel all overnight, out-of-state, out-of-country trips. And we are leaving it to the discretion of the school administration to make decisions about local trips close to the time, because we don't want to pull the plug on Canopy Lake and the music festival if we do it now and then on May 1st they decide to cancel it. So we will leave that to you. And if there's anything of note, no pun intended, to let us know about, we leave that to you. Okay? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
the
you
principals,
so much.
thank you for being here
Thanks.
tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Good discussion, a lot of information. Yes, yes. Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so we have public comments at this time. Our agenda schedules 15 minutes for public comments, and participants are allowed 3 minutes for their comments. This is a reminder that school committee meetings are business meetings held in public and not public meetings. This is not an opportunity for discussion. However, the chair will follow up with the speaker after the meeting as need be. Comments should pertain to agenda items or topics that are within the purview or authority of the school. As I said, there's a maximum of 3 minutes. Comments are made through the chair. Improper conduct and remarks will not be allowed. And when you come up, please give your name and address and the topic you want to speak to. So is anyone here for public comments? Yes. Hi.
My name is Elizabeth Davis Edwards. I live in Bolton. I'm here to address the investigation that you'll be going into executive session to discuss this evening. We're here today in the wake of the sentence. Actually, before I even start, I also want to recognize the fact that this is a massive detour from the coronavirus, which I recognize is a very hard mental adjustment for all of us, because the coronavirus is kind of overwhelming and important. So I ask for everyone's patience, is because it seems that we have 2 really significant hot topics being discussed in the same meeting. So with that in mind, we are here in addition to the coronavirus in the wake of the sentencing of one of our teachers, Mrs. Baraka, who pled guilty and just 2 days ago was sentenced by a judge in the Clinton District Court for sending nude photographs to a 15-year-old student in my daughter's class between September 2018 and March 2019. This is based on the court documents and themselves. Several students knew that this had been going on for months, but when one student stood up and reported it to Mr. DiDomenico, nothing changed. In fact, no action was taken until that student went to the police on September 20th, after Mrs. Baraka was allowed to return to teach for another school year. She was fired in October 2019. As members of this community, we must ask the question, what would have happened if that student had not gone directly to the authorities? It's difficult to understand why Paul DiDomenico would put himself and his career at such risk by keeping this criminal accusation to himself, rather than sharing it with Superintendent Clenchy, his boss, or filing a 51A and contacting the Bolton Police Department, a legal requirement for any school employee. One would have hoped that this would have piqued the curiosity of the school committee as well, causing them to question how this happened, increase transparency and search for answers, and just as critically, establish that this had not happened to other students under Mrs. Baraka's care while a teacher in our HS for 3 years. Rather, what we have witnessed has looked quite different. The investigation that the school committee will discuss in executive session today came only on the heels of a massive outcry from the community. And since the initial approval at the November 26th school committee meeting to hire an independent law firm to investigate our administration's response to this crisis, while updates have been shared by the school committee chair in the context of chair's comments, the investigation has not been posted on one school committee meeting agenda. The very purpose of these agendas is to alert the community so they can both participate and listen to discussion on issues that they deem important and relevant. Finally, to this day, there has been minimal effort by our administration to reach out to students and rebuild the trust in their teachers and their school. I have no personal agenda here, but we have the right to trust and even demand that our superintendent and our school committee hold the well-being and safety of our students above all else. Many of us have lost that trust. So to the school committee, as you walk into the executive session today, I encourage you to consider what needs to be done to rebuild that trust. The answer is actually very simple. Please put the students first. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. Hi, Lorraine, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Lorraine Lamasco, Bolton, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you. Different on this side of the table, quite interesting, actually. I just want to clarify something. Are you, did you...
This is not a discussion, you can make a statement,
I know,
but I'm
I
not
was in
going
your
to
seat and I
discuss
gave you the document, so we're all good. But I just want to clarify, if you said earlier that Attorney Norris would be at the next school committee meeting and presenting to the public.
I did, he would be presenting the executive summary of the report to the school committee. It won't be a public forum. It is presented to the committee. At that point, the executive summary will be made public, however.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. I would only add that, Kathy, you and I worked together for 3, 4, 5 years, however many years it was. I don't know Leah and Joe, initiation by fire guys. You've had a tough year. The whole school committee and the administration's had a really tough year, and it breaks my heart having sat at that table for several years and really cared about what goes on, not just with the students, with the staff, and there's Mike McCarroll, and with Mike McCarroll. But I would just encourage you, this is your opportunity to start to rebuild the trust that has been eroded. And while many people who don't have kids at the high school or don't have boys at the high school like I do, don't have a boy that was in that teacher's class last year and a boy that was in that teacher's class this year, and I know there's another parent, a couple parents in this room that have boys that were in that class, I encourage you to do what you need to do the right thing, and to help to rebuild the trust of the community, because this district is amazing. It deserves way more than it's gotten. And we really are looking to you to see what your next moves are.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Brooke, we have the robotics trip, baseball trip. Those are those stricken from the agenda?
So what I'm looking for is
excuse me,
approval.
who are you? Have
I'm
you
the
been
robotics trip
recognized?
approval, isn't that me? So obviously...
Al.
I'm not up?
Protocol. No, you have to be recognized by the chief.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we recognized each other.
I recognize you.
Oh, okay, you recognize me, so
But
I will speak.
I wanted to invite you to come and sit at the table.
Oh, I'm just going to stand. This is only going to take a minute.
How about Mr. Cullinane? Are you just standing? You want to sit?
I'm just trying to run out of here.
He's just trying to hide behind them.
So,
Okay, Al, I'm going to suspend the rules for you.
that
Yes,
the
go ahead.
DESE open up us to travel are minuscule. But nonetheless, I would like to have approval for my field trip to Maine in case that minuscule event happens.
Why do you always do this to me?
Why do I
know
do-
I love you.
What am I doing?
But now we might have to tell you, no, I think we just passed a motion.
That says, I'm here for approval,
Yeah.
given the other motion. So if tomorrow a miracle cure comes and the next day DESE says it's okay to travel, I have my approval already. So this approval is not overriding the previous motion. It's in case something between now and then changes DESE's position as per your previous motion.
When is the trip?
It's scheduled for April 2nd.
Through the 4th.
So you will vote yes, and then
Wait.
the 99.999% chance is nothing will happen, and then the 0.001% chance that the miracle cure that I'm assured all those MIT scientists are working on comes through.
Just got closed
Then
today,
then
right?
my approval is set. That's all.
I want to hear from the committee on this. I'm biased. Steve?
I would move that if the situation changes, then his guys can go to Maine.
Leah?
Guys and girls, I'm sorry.
Team, yes. Leah? You understand what he's asking?
Yeah, I think that it would be really hard for us to formulate language that wouldn't need to be revisited anyway, right? So if we were to say there's significant change occurs, or are we saying that the state of emergency is ended and guidance is now that people can, like the language that we formulate right now is going to be so vague that we're going to have to vote on it again anyway. And so I'm just worried about that the I don't even know how to formulate a motion.
Mike?
Well, if we do this, is that setting a precedent that we just continue on business as usual with inviting field trip members to come and seek approval under the condition that conditions do change? I mean, that's what it seems to me like we're doing.
Joe, do you want to just write a note and I'll read it?
My comment to the board is basically acting what I was saying, that you set the precedent here, which I would really comfortable with doing it this time.
Elaine?
I like the creativity. I think this is exactly the kind of like flexible, outside of the box thinking that we need to be doing right now. I agree that it's probably a 99.999% chance that it wouldn't happen, but maybe we could do something to say we're going to, that we could approve it given something changes, and then immediately if something changes, it would trigger people to come back. Not that we need to do, everyone needs to come here not that everybody needs to come here right now and say, well, in the off chance things change, can you approve my trip? You stand here right now, so let's deal with it. But in the future, if something changes, then we sort of waive some of the conditions to say, well, you have to come to a school committee meeting 30 days in advance, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that, and just be more flexible.
I see what you're saying. So if I'm capturing this correctly, and instead of approving it now, if this miraculously clears up on April 1st, we waive the approval timeline and say you can go. Is that what I'm hearing people say?
Sounds good to me.
I would say that I like Elaine's idea of doing away with that rigid 30-day window.
That's what I'm saying.
But we would still have to vote on it on April 1st.
Right.
Or whenever. I don't.
April 1st is a Thursday.
Right.
This would be a Friday. So I'm just...
How about March 31st, if we say March 31st?
Wonderful.
Do we have a March 31st meeting?
No, oh no, we're just going to get our crack quorum team together
our five
to meet on the
mysterious-
fly in the parking lot.
five mysterious people.
Mike?
That was exactly my point.
Yes.
Like if we do this for multiple field trips, are we going to be assembling 3 times a week to sort of say, yes, we're going to approve this?
No, we are not. We'll look at the timing, and I'm not a doctor or a medical professional, but I would say it's a long shot that the fog is going to lift and there's going to be a cure. However, I want to leave the door open that if something happens and people are able to do their trip, we waive the waiting period. How's that?
Sure. I would just write the motion that our trip is approved, subject to the conditions of the previous motion.
No, I think this is the deal, Al.
All right.
And you know I love you, because I said it on television, so now everybody knows.
Well,
and Steve too, but that we will waive the waiting period and we'll approve it if there is a change and people who want us to have that consideration, we will do it as close to a meeting as we can. See, our goal is always to make sure the kids can take advantage of the opportunities that you all provide for them and work hard to support them in. So that is why we've had our traveling quorum meet to do things. But those are also times when people had not followed the policy and we were being good sports. This is an emergency situation. It's unusual and it's outside the box thinking.
And we're waiving the policy.
We're waiving the
30-day.
The 30-day policy.
Sure.
Can you live with that?
Of course.
Thank you, Al.
I mean, I'm sure it's a moot point, but I wouldn't be doing my due diligence.
No, you wouldn't, but we appreciate it. And we appreciate all you do with the baseball team, the robotics, and the science curriculum. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I was here for the baseball team.
Oh, now it comes out. Yeah,
but
that's okay.
we're good.
Are you good with that?
Yeah.
All right. All right, Leah.
I would say too that it's probably a one and done situation. So if the fog lifts and we come together for an emergency approval, we would then disband the former policy altogether.
And just approve everything that's out there.
Can we not think that far ahead? I'm starting to get a
I
headache
just don't
now.
think that we'd have to get together.
Yeah.
200 times.
Okay.
We'll just meet again.
The problem with some of these trips is that you get invited at the last minute, so you don't have that 30-day window. That's kind of, so the policy itself makes things difficult sometimes. So
Can we take that up another time?
Absolutely.
And thank you for bringing it up. And you remind us, will you?
I will, I promise.
Okay. Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Al.
And thanks, Steve. Thanks for being here. All right, so now we've got robotics, is there baseball, no, DECA donation, acceptance. Okay. So Pat, we'll tee this up.
Okay. So I have a letter from Stavros and Andropoulos. He's the advisor for the DECA program. He's received some donation, and I'd like to read this letter to you. Nashoba DECA would like to request approval for donations recently made by local businesses to our chapter. The funds received for these businesses will be used for two reasons. We currently have at least 13 students scheduled for the International Career Development Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, at the end of April.
Can we take the money anyway? Just put in the bank?
This is a costly trip, and we intend to reduce the cost to attend for students. The second way we plan to use the funds is to establish a Nashoba DECA scholarship that will be presented to two seniors leaving our program, heading into the business world. We plan on awarding two $500 scholarships during the senior awards night at the end of the school year. We are currently working with guidance to develop application criteria for the scholarships. The donations are as follows: a $2,500 donation from the Clinton Savings Bank. Clinton Savings Bank has been our primary sponsor for 9 years. The donation continues a very strong relationship between Nashoba DECA and CSB. The second one is a $1,000 donation from Eastern Bank. This is the second year Eastern Bank has sponsored our program. And the third one is a $500 donation from Bolton Global Capital. This is the third year in a row BGC has sponsored our program.
So what's the implications if they're not going to go? Can we still take the money? I mean, that's the bottom line. Oh, Steve is saying yes, okay.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, yeah, Mike.
I was going to say, the money could just go into the scholarship fund.
Or it can be put in an account to defray the cost
For
next year.
Right.
Yes.
That's his plan for next year.
Okay. Would you read the motion?
Yes, I move to accept 3 donations to the DECA program: $2,500 from Clinton Savings Bank, $1,000 from Eastern Bank, and $500 from Bolton Global Capital.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Edgar Grant Book.
I have a manual, a grants manual that is required for us to be in receipt of federal grants. Took a long time to come up with this manual because basically what it has is all of Mass General law as it intertwines with federal law and purchasing and contracting services and procurement and all that good stuff. I have copies of the manual for all of you to take a look at. You can either take it on the way out. There's also an electronic version if you prefer to read it that way. And as you can see, the name of the manual is called the Edgar Grants Manual, and Edgar stands for the Education Department General Regulations, and that's the federal.
Sounds riveting.
So I would like you to review it.
Okay.
If you have any questions or comments. Basically, it's like a procedures manual, too, as to what goes on in my office and in regards to procurement and, processing of bills and use of funds.
Do we have to vote or anything on it? Or is
You're
it
going to
just-
have to vote to approve it. We have to have this in place.
Yes.
And then I will give it to our auditors once you approve it.
Okay. So would it be helpful to put it on our agenda for the next meeting?
If everybody thinks that.
Okay, and I need a copy. Yes. Leah.
So, because I have no accounting background, and I really respect what you do, I wonder, has anybody else vetted this other than us? Other than you?
This was a, like a template that NASBO gave us. And basically what we had to do was insert our, like all the Mass General law and the federal laws were already in the template. And then we basically had to input what we're doing here in this district. So NASBO is Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials. That's my group that I belong to. Your people? Yeah, my people. So anyway, I've gone over this. Michelle Cody has gone over this. I've gone over it again. I've been trying to get this as an agenda item for a couple of years. It's been a couple of years before, in the making anyway. It took a long time.
Okay. Yes.
Is there, is a requirement?
Yes, it is a requirement, yeah.
By whom? By Mass General law?
By the federal government for, to have to receive federal grants. You need to have a voted version. We've always had this in draft format, and now we need the original, a voted format to be in place.
So our task is to review it, come back with questions, and entertain a motion to pass, to accept it.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, and I didn't get one, so just leave one for me. I'll pick up.
Get one?
You know it.
Leah.
So is perhaps our lawyer team looking over this, or is that not necessary?
It's a template from MASBO, so I don't think it's something necessarily that our lawyers need to review, unless our lawyer would like to speak on that, and unless you...
It's probably worthwhile for us to take a look at and make sure that it's okay before you go through it.
So give Mike a copy on his way out.
I don't think you're not going to recommend that we approve it, so it's...
I know.
But I do want to, if there's no other substantive comment or discussion, I would like to move the agenda. Anything else? Pat?
Yes. Next on the agenda, I believe, is the budget.
Yes. So I would like to have a motion to approve the FY21 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion or questions, comments?
Kathy, you have to state the amount in the motion.
I do. I don't have
I don't have the amount either. That's what I said, so moved.
I think
Oh, Leah has it.
either that or I'm sure Pat
What's the
does.
amount, Pat?
$28,029,848. 58029848.
Wait a minute, 58,
It's an 8.
58029?
Yeah, 848.
I have hearing problems, 290848. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the FY21 budget in the amount of $58,029,848?
So moved.
Second. Questions, discussion? Joseph?
I'll do my best, and I'll be very brief. I mentioned this to the superintendent when I saw her. I'm having a hard time talking on Friday. I do want to compliment. I'm so fortunate that so many people left, but I do want to I know it sounds awful. I want to compliment the superintendent and the business manager and Ms. Cody and Ms. Smith for the work that they did, at least presenting to the town of Lancaster. I thought that their presentation before the FinCom went exceedingly well. I thought that both the select board and the FinCom was extremely receptive to the budget we put forward. And I told the superintendent, I complimented her Friday at the PD privately. I want to do it publicly. She and her staff did an excellent job, and I really expected to be a lot more pushback. And they diffused the situation immensely, so thank you very much.
And thank you for that comment. Any
Appreciate
other
that.
comments? Leah, and then Steve.
I wonder how the other FinComs responded, or...
The Stowe, we've rescheduled a couple of times, and I think it's rescheduled for, was it 23rd maybe? 23rd, 24th of March?
24th, yeah.
Is that what it is? Thank you. Bolton was excellent. They were very good the other night, so, yeah, so it's just a case now of going to Stowe.
So it should be tickled.
And they're the easiest one. Well, not easy, but like they had the lowest.
They have the lowest. But I always find they're awesome meetings. I really enjoy meeting with them. I mean, I enjoyed the others as well, but no, I do, and I thought the
These Canadians, you know, what they think is fun.
The community member that was in Lancaster, I thought he had great questions. He really did. But and Bolton was outstanding. I find when we go to Stowe, you'd think it would just be easy, but it doesn't work like that. When we get there, they've got really rich discussion questions that we think on and reflect on, and all three communities always give us really good feedback that we're able to come back and utilize.
Thank you.
So we're very appreciative of those meetings.
Thank you. Steve?
I would just like to say that the Budget and Warrant Subcommittee looked at the budget prior to our meeting this evening and approved it, recommending that it be passed.
Well, that makes all the difference in the world. Thank you so much. Yes?
I don't want to throw a wrench in the works, which is always a great way to start a comment, right? No, I want to ask about coronavirus and how it could affect next year's budget, both in terms of what we're doing now, like money that we're spending now to mitigate, but also like we did not vote to move some of those monies from the stabilization funds to free up that money.
Okay, I gotta stick a pin in this. That's not part of the agenda, not part of the motion. We can put that on an agenda item for the next time, but I'm gonna call the vote without objection. I hear what you're saying. Let's make it a separate agenda item so we can give it the time that it needs.
But then we're locked in.
No,
So is there flexibility?
Okay. We'll be okay to have the flexibility that we need. And you know what, it's a great question. It really is a great question. But I almost feel like it's too soon to know.
Okay.
Because especially if we're forced out or if we're forced into a quarantine and a statewide, there's so many things that can happen that number could be all over the place.
I just know that we cut a lot of things and this is a
But we're
tight
approving
budget.
the bottom line, and then we have to
If
be
she says there's
discretionary.
flexibility, I am satisfied.
Okay, but we can still put it on an agenda item if you want to discuss further. Think about that when we get to the next thing. Can I call a vote? And we have a motion, a second. All those in favor of approving the FY21 budget in the amount of $58,029,848 signify by raising your hand.
Thank you.
Opposed? Okay, and again, I echo what Joe said, and just kudos to all of you. Tough year, but you did a good job. And to the school committee, your thoroughness and thoughtfulness in this process is just exceptional. And I want to thank you for your time and effort, and it wasn't an easy year, so thank you. I think Steve gave us the budget and warrant report, thank you. Consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda of March 11th, 2020, containing the meeting minutes of February 26th, 2020, and March 2nd, 2020, and warrants for March 13th, 2020.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Items to be considered for next or future agenda. Let's see what we got. Next time, planning calendar. All right. I'm looking quickly at the parking lot. It's turning into a tailgate party. There's so much stuff on it. Go ahead, Brooke.
We're also, I would suggest that we're going to need some time to do a follow-up on the coronavirus.
Got it. Put that on.
And I would also suggest that we are going to need MSBA again
Okay.
to have some session.
MSBA?
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so now we're at March 25th. Oh, we have our superintendent's evaluation workshop at 5 o'clock. We have a student presentation for Mary Rollinson. We're not going to have to do a DECA trip approval, and then the Edgar Grant book vote. Yes, Mike?
I'm wondering if
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We have Attorney Norris making a presentation of the executive summary of the investigation. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mike.
It's okay. I wonder if our March 25th meeting will be held here or at some other venue.
So there's more disinfectant or whatever. Why?
I would expect a large turnout for that.
Well, right now it's planned for here.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Leah?
I wonder if there's any value in us conversing about telecommuting and what protocol.
In light of the coronavirus?
Yeah.
I think that you'll get some guidance, I anticipate, again, because it's shifting so much from your organization, MASC.
Okay.
So I don't think that that's probably something that necessarily needs to come up at this table right now. I would give it a week.
It would come up in our next, under the auspices of the coronavirus update. Okay? Mike?
Sorry, I would just like to be on record as recommending a larger venue for next week's meeting.
So noted.
Thank you.
Anybody else have feelings about that?
I agree.
I disagree.
I agree, but my gut feeling is that's going to be a moot point, because by that point, the government's going to be restricting our large groups, and that will be a problem.
Joseph?
I disagree. I don't think we should change the venue.
Okay. Okay, we'll take it under advisement. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we are going to move into executive session. Can we have a motion, please?
All right, I move to go into executive session at 7:50 PM pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline